And maybe one other quick follow-up about affordable housing.
Right.
Is there a fairly recent city model that you support or endorse in terms of affordable housing and transit and walkability? And
oh, right. I think Portland's done some great things, and I'm hearing from our planning commission that our planning commission has gone down to Portland and seen some of the things they've done, including an expedited permit process for designs that are pre-approved. And it doesn't mean that all the designs are cookie cutter. It means here are design elements or form-based decision making that the architects, designers are saying can make a lot of sense. Also, Minneapolis has done some very good things along this, which similarly it's giving some flexibility and fluidity for the designers of affordable housing and multifamily housing. And I think that's really important, is for us to learn best practices from other cities and see what we can do that's just going to make it a more pleasant place. And overarching everything, our neighborhoods and our neighborhood leaders need to be involved in these decision making. This cannot just be something that the city does in a vacuum. I know the city has been good about reaching out to neighborhood leaders, but people feel oftentimes that they're not heard, or that they spend a lot of time, multiple years, working on these project plans that end up on shelves and aren't part of the decision-making process. So, in terms of just including people, I would say that would be a model, and that would be something that I believe would be very important as we're going forward.
Great. We have a couple minutes left, actually.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you a scenario, kind of following up on the last question.
Sure.
So in my neighborhood, we have, I live basically off the Aurora corridor, so we're getting bus rapid transit in a couple of years. And there was actually an urban design study that was done. It was led by the mayor's office, and so we looked at this corridor, looked at the station design, and then we had a public process where we had different community design meetings, and so the idea behind that was that around the station areas, we would look at the zoning and think about maybe we could upzone, because it's primarily single-family residential in that area, and this is really because it's one of the main north-south spines in the entire city.
What's the cross street that you're
76th. It's right where it comes around the lake.
Right.
And there's a Green Lake PCC right there.
Right.
So what happened through the public process was basically the city came up with the idea, maybe we could change a small portion of single-family residential to, I think it was basically low-rise, and then we would want a good, an expanded pedestrian network, wider sidewalks, so that when developers come in, we actually get something really good as a public amenity.
Right.
So some of the neighbors actually came together and said, we don't want any rezoning. We want the neighborhood to stay the same.
Exactly.
Exactly. So what do you, when we we all know about transit-oriented development and how we're supposed to fit people in there, how would you address the neighbors in this situation?
Right, and I don't think that's an uncommon scenario. The more unusual scenario is what the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association did. And they had some very key leaders that understood, hey, we've got light rail coming in here in X number of years. Let's be ahead of the game so that we are driving this, that we're not reacting to it. I think that is a model that I really liked, because there were some strong leaders that were invited in. They took the leadership. It wasn't like the city going to them first. They got themselves organized and said, what is it that we want to accomplish here? So those neighbors were provided some additional assistance and support, but in terms of tell the city what it is that and what is important to you in this region. So they looked at this, the pie essentially, around where the light rail station was going to be. They didn't like how that design was coming along, and they actually recommended that it be moved from 15th to 12th. And the city and Sound Transit both responded very well to that. It was a reasonable approach. So then over the years, the planning department, the mayor, people came together around the Roosevelt neighborhood and said, all right, that's good. How many units are you able to take? They didn't want the 12-story around 15th. They wanted Roosevelt High School to continue to be the gem of the neighborhood, that it was showcased and not blotted out by tall buildings. And so they agreed, we will have taller buildings over on 12th, We will reduce the height down to 15th. Then we have that merging in with a single-family neighborhood so that it fit. That is an approach that I think ought to be applauded and modeled. And in your neck of the woods, that's where I would start as well. There are always going to be people who oppose it, so bring them in and say, all right, how can we work together? And if it's done in a way that's respectful, people more often than not respond.
Okay.
Express to you is that my relationships with the elected officials has been strong and deep and ongoing. So as somebody who is looking to earn your endorsement, the benefit here is that I've got good established relationships. It doesn't mean that we think alike or that I'm going to be in lockstep with them forever, but it takes a long time to develop trusting relationships, as you well know. And to be able to walk in and say, I can work with Tom Rasmussen on senior issues. We have worked with on elder abuse and on parks levies, that I have good, strong relations with Tim Burgess around public safety and with Sally Clark around land use. And it just goes to say that I'm going to be an effective council member from day one. And I think that's important because I'll be advocating for the same issues that are your issues.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.